When I think of resiliency in the environment, I think of how we sometimes take it for granted that the environment is not as resilient as we expect it to be. It is very resilient in that it can handle a lot, but we sometimes just succumb it to a lot of different pollutants and problems that are going to have issues in the future.
Being able to bounce back from anything. Perseverance. Being able to persevere.
Resilience. When I think of resiliency, I think of the ability of individuals along with, I guess, the environment, our society to adapt to changes.
I guess resiliency for me is just being able to work through issues, being able to power through things and overcome obstacles. For the environment, this might mean just being able to work through some of the effects that we've had on the environment, the pollution and the kind of the theory now is that some of these larger storms are because of global warming, stuff like that, these superstorms. So our resiliency in the future is going to be dealing with those and being able to recover and keep working as human beings through them.
Personally, I tend to have a pretty social view of resiliency. I don't think any individual efforts like recycling that I see a lot of around campus is going to make much difference. So I do think that it will take social action, and I also think that it's very hard to convince people to stop doing the worst thing. So I do think that we're resilient when it comes to saving paper or reusing cups, but when it comes to not driving as much as we drive, which I think is the bigger cost, not flying on airplanes as much as we do, which has a much bigger effect. I think in the bigger things we don't change very much, but we feel good about ourselves, so our resiliency on the things that we can manage without having to sacrifice too much. So that would be my personal view.
I feel like we've been resilient in putting up with weird weather patterns like this winter that are probably caused by like our own treatment of the environment and things that we've done.
I guess my skin is like not necessarily like can take the sun that well, so I'd probably have a better chance of having issues with that, like cancer, for instance, melanoma. I don't know what I'm really doing personally to help the future as far as like environmental changes. I don't think there's really anything we can do. Like most of the ocean is just, a lot of it is plastic. I mean, you put a net in and you just get a bunch of plastic in the net. Like, I mean, we're just kind of turning into plastic. We're going to be plastic someday, literally, because that's what we're going to eat.
I feel like I am being resilient in a sense of adapting to globalization, coming from the Caribbean, and more particularly like a developing country. I believe me seeking education in the U.S. is a form of resiliency in terms of I'm adapting to the ongoing trend of globalization and how we have to go beyond the walls or beyond our immediate society.
You know, I'm not so sure. We're pretty secluded up here, I guess, except for our winter this spring. We're pretty resilient through all this, but I guess trying to make a conscious effort to recycle more, just to be more eco-friendly and just being resilient and trying to break habits and stuff like that.
Well, one is I'm a big biker. I happen to live in Minneapolis, and so I do actually drive 75 miles once a week to come up here. But while I'm up here and while I'm in the cities, I'm a biker. So I actually try to drive as little as possible. And I did live in Argentina during my sabbatical, the last sabbatical I had, and noticed how little people throw away. They use like trash cans per week about this big, and I would come home and see our huge trash cans in Minneapolis. And so I started to pay attention to how much I was throwing away.
feel like it's very important to be resilient for the future of the environment because we have caused these problems, and it's going to be harder to fix them than it would have been to prevent them, and we're going to have to work hard.
For myself to live,
Yeah.
no, I don't think so. I mean, in my personal life, I suppose, yeah, it is important to be resilient because I have to mentally stay on top of things. And from an environmental standpoint, I'm not going to be feeling the effects, I don't think. Anything too extreme. I mean, maybe a little, but I don't think it's going to get to the point where humans are going to be extinct in my lifetime or our lifetime.
I believe that resilience is important, just because studies are showing where a lot of the Earth's ecosystems are depleting, and a lot of things are, I guess, I want to say, not as they used to be in the past, and that has made it more difficult on our generation. I know eventually I want to have a family, and so I would want them to experience just as much or even more than I would have experienced.
I guess it's kind of how you apply it. If we're talking about sort of the environmental effects here, then I think it's going to be an important thing, especially in the future, as we begin to understand more the effects of our actions on the environment, on the climate, everything like that. It's going to become a larger issue, especially as we start running through our natural resources and stuff like that.
I actually, pessimistically, I tend to look like an optimistic person, but I'm pretty pessimistic. I really think that it's just to make us feel good. I think that our efforts are pretty modest. I lived in Germany for a while where they have much bigger environmental initiatives, and so they separate materials so that they can be recycled. And I actually think that most of our recycling stuff goes to the same place as the trash, but we do it. We have 7 trash cans lined up with different numbers on them just to make us feel good about what we're doing. But in the end, I think it just makes us throw things away more easily with less